Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inaugural first episode of the Retro Rewatch. We've been wanting to do this for weeks now. Got a close family friend, childhood friend, roommate. We reconnected recently, but got Midian or AKA Chris. Is that okay to call you that?
Yeah, it's Madian. That's
Midian.
actually a name that I've used since high school. Like whenever, like say when Xbox came out, you
Right.
had to have a profile name. That was
Right.
my profile name on Xbox, and I've had it for 20 something years now.
I like it. Original.
Yeah.
So,
So
welcome to Retro Rewatch, episode one. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. We're just getting it started. Get out there in YouTube land. I know this first one might be a little rough, but hey, we're giving it a shot.
hey, we're doing something. We're getting it done. This is you said that we've been wanting to do it for weeks, which is true. But I've been trying to do this for over 2 years now.
Yeah.
I mean, our really good deceased friend, he and I were going to do this, and he was a big inspiration for it. But I'm glad that you and I are reconnected and we figured this out, and maybe we can actually take it somewhere and have some fun with it.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out, rest in peace, Ryan Brewer, to the big guy out there upstairs overlooking. Hope you can get a laugh out of this. And this is for you, buddy. He had over what, 7,000,
Yeah, 7,000
and
DVDs,
horror was
4Ks,
one of his
Blu-rays.
favorites. So
Yeah.
we were always thinking about him during this.
Yeah, I mean, his name's gonna come up a lot, so hopefully he'll still be alive and well through us, and we'll get some good stories in there.
Exactly.
So other people can get to know him too, even though they never met him.
That's right. What we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to do top five horror franchises. And I know that's very broad. We're talking about that offline here, but I'm gonna let you jump right in, Chris. You can kind of take us wherever you would like, but give us your five, and we can bring up some info and some stats on it.
All right, so we are, like you said, it's real broad. So whenever we were talking about this, I mean, I was like, man, which direction do we take this?
Exactly.
Um, so I'm going to give a five, really not necessarily a top five. I can almost guarantee there's nobody out there that this would be their top five. It might be
There you
my
go.
top five because they're my five that I picked. Although
Right.
that being said, there's probably a franchise or two here that really I thought it would be a good franchise to talk about, not necessarily that it's my top five.
Right.
We've been around for a few decades at this point, seen several thousand films. There's a lot of franchises out there.
Oh yeah.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give four of them up front, and I'm going to hold on to one of them. Hopefully, we'll actually get to it in time. If not, maybe that'll be something for a part two or something. We'll see how it goes. But so the first franchise that we're going to talk about is Hellraiser.
Okay.
That is a quintessential franchise. It is a genre defining franchise. It's one of those franchises that affected every movie after it.
Right.
In some way, shape, form, or fashion. It came out in the 80s whenever you had like Freddy Krueger, you had Jason. Michael Myers was one of the first, but he had already been out for a minute. And of course, he influenced Jason in Friday the 13th. But Hellraiser, I think, was definitely more spiritual, a little closer to like Freddy Krueger. And I mean, but anyway, it's one of those titans from that era. Next, we are going to talk about, after that, we are going to talk about Wreck.
Oh wow.
Um,
I like it.
have you heard of this before?
I have I think one of them, but that is a out of nowhere choice. I like it originally.
Yep. So these are foreign films from Spain. And like I said, we'll get to that. There is an American remake of the first one. We'll talk about that too. Um, Then we are also going to talk about the Conjuring. Can you see that?
Those are good. We were talking about it
So,
the other night.
yeah, the Conjuring franchise, and we're
Yeah.
going to get into that. And I mean, of course, it's become so much more than just the Conjuring. So, I mean, I
Mhm.
think that's one of the reasons to talk about that. And of course, the main brains behind it is James Wan. I mean, who
Yeah.
is just a mastermind of horror.
Yes.
I mean, his tendrils stretch out over all kinds of stuff. And then we are going to talk about the other big man's original five, the Evil Dead series. I don't know how
Classic.
you could do
I
do
like
like
it.
a top five and not include some Evil Dead.
Right.
And then, like I said, we will. That's four. We will hold
Right.
number five for later in the podcast
There you go.
or whatever the YouTube video, whatever we're doing here. All
Exactly.
right, so let's talk about Hellraiser. So first off, how many of the Hellraisers have you seen? Do you know?
Actually, speaking of that, Chris, I found this. Hey, props out to Screen Rant doing a little. If you can see this, this will help. So I got the list here and the dates. I thought this was a really good breakdown. So
Okay,
I
yeah,
would actually say I've seen the first four. I think I might even saw some of these with you when we were roommates in college, but I'll say that most recent one, I believe it was on was that Hulu? But
yep,
I'll
that's
say I
Hulu.
think I've missed maybe Revelations and Judgment just because I remember you telling me they were got a little weird, a little wonky.
So
Uh,
Revelations, it's funny you bring that up because Revelations is not even a real movie.
hmm,
I mean, what happened with that is Weinstein and Miramax owned the rights to Hellraiser, and they were due to lose those rights at some point in time if they didn't continue making the films. And so it came about time that they were going to lose their rights. And so they had to throw something together really fast. I mean, the movie's like an hour and 6 minutes long, if you want to call it a movie. It's unwatchable. It's the first one that didn't have Doug Bradley as Pinhead.
right.
It's a mess. I mean, to put it lightly. So I mean, but that did retain the rights for them for at least one more film before Weinstein got in the much bigger trouble he got into, and then a lot of their properties wound up getting liquidated and lost in the shuffle of legal battles and whatever. But back to the point. So with Revelations, it did give way to Judgment, which was either the 10th or 11th one. I think it's the 10th one. And that was actually pretty good for the stuff that involves the Hellraiser. Now, what they did is they made a movie that was
Okay.
almost like Seven that they interspliced with Hellraiser and Pinhead, and the stuff that was like dealing with, I think it was the accountant, if I remember correctly in the movie. That stuff was actually pretty cool, but unfortunately, they made the film for, I don't know, like $10 or something. So I mean, some of the production values are not the best in the world, but it really is not awful. And then of course it led on to the Hulu one, which we could talk about at some other time. But what I really want to focus on here is so you've got the first one that's like the original, it's the one that set it up. In a lot of ways, the story is fairly straightforward, albeit, especially at the time, I think it was probably very unique and very new. Where you've got kind of like a haunted house, really, but it's a new way to tell a haunted house movie where you've got Frank, who is the sinful brother who is enjoying all the pleasures that the world can offer, and finds the box, opens the box, and the Cenobite's taking. Okay, and then he's trying to be resurrected essentially through his sister-in-law. And I don't know how much I've got to really explain about that. If somebody's watching this, I'm sure they've probably seen the movie. But what really gets interesting is number two is really amazing because I mean it actually goes to hell at one part of the movie, and I can't think of any other film that's got a vision of hell quite like Hellraiser 2 is my favorite. Then you've got Hell on Earth, which is three, where you've got Cenobites that have like CD players in their head and stuff like that. That's crazy. Then we get to four. Four is where it gets really interesting to me as far as like going down the rabbit hole. And you look back now at what the franchise was, what it's become, and comparing it versus movies now. So like recently, Arrow Video came out with a quadrilogy of the first four films on 4K. And the fourth film is an Alan Smithy film. Do you know what that is?
You lost me on that one.
Okay, so Alan Smithy is a name that directors use whenever they don't approve of what the studio did with their film. They don't want to be associated with the film. They don't want the credit for it because it's not their film. There have been very famous people that have used it. For instance, like David Lynch used it with Dune, the 1984 Dune,
Hmm.
whenever it was brought to TV and it had the extended cut that was like, I don't like 4 hours long or something like that. It wasn't approved. It didn't have finished special effects. Anyway, I mean, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. So his name isn't on it. It's Alan Smithy. So the director of four, um, which was not Peter Atkins. I'm trying to think. Peter Atkins wrote it. But anyway, what's really neat about this release of Hellraiser 4 is his original version of the movie is on here. They have his original work print cut, and I've started it, but I haven't finished it. But it is very different than the cut that they actually produced and put out. Um, with the next film, Hellraiser Inferno, there's actually some neat background to this. Do you know who directed this?
Ooh. You got me there. And Chris, to correct you there, it's Kevin Yangher did the number four on according to IMDb.
Okay, so that's who
Okay.
actually directed it. Because, like I said, Alan Smithy is the name
Okay.
that they put on it because he didn't
Okay.
want to have anything to do with it. I would
Okay.
like to watch his cut though. But anyway, if you've seen Bloodline, what they did is they made it
Yeah.
almost like an anthology movie where it had three separate parts with a frame story like in space. Um, I I mean it's okay. Like it was, especially with the frame story in space. I mean, at some point in time, every one of these guys had to go to space, right? I mean, you had like Jason in space for 10. I don't think Freddie went to space per se, but anyway. Um, so, but the director of Inferno, which Inferno is actually pretty neat because it is also kind of like a Seven rip off, if you will, where like you've got this detective, he's investigating these really heinous crimes with hooks and chains and this, that, and the other,
Mhm.
and they can't, it's they can't figure out who's doing the murders, right? And it winds up being there's this intersection the box and um between the box and these murders. And anyway, so the director is actually Scott Dickerson. If I remember, yeah, Derrickson. That's what I wanted to check. So I was like, I can't remember if it's Derrickson or anyway. But you and I were talking about a film literally this last Saturday that I hadn't seen that came out like 10 years ago. You remember what it was?
Sinister? No.
Sinister. So this guy is
Yeah.
the director of Sinister, which is
Oh no.
phenomenal movie. I mean,
Okay.
it had everything. It had
Great.
good spooky story, it had jump
Mhm.
scares, it had ambient, sound this, that, or the other. But so like with Hellraiser Inferno, oh, wrong one. Hold
No
on.
problem.
Hellraiser Inferno, you actually get to see kind of some of those same things because it was one of his first films that he made.
Okay.
Okay, and then of course after that they went into Rick Boda territory. He made the next three which was Hellraiser, Hellseeker, and Deader, and then you had Hell World. Hell World's where it kind of lost me because that was one that was almost like The Matrix or something. It happens in a computer game. That was really weird. However, that is if not the first one of Henry Cavill's first movie,
Wow.
and he is not Superman sized in that movie. He
I got
hadn't like he hadn't juiced up yet.
you.
So but the Rick Boda movies are pretty neat. And what's neat about them is it starts with, like I said, with Hellseeker, which ties back into the Kirsty storyline that they had been away from since part three. So, is there anything that you want to add about Hellraiser?
Yeah, all of them, like I said, all of them are really great films. I felt like it started really hot, and then it just kind of went to direct to video land on the later ones in college. And even looking at that list, looks like they took a little time off. I think it was it'd be 2000 2002. I think they made two in 2005, and they took like a 6 year break, 7 year break. And I will say the most recent one on Hulu wasn't bad. I like watching. It's
No,
very
it was pretty good. The thing
yeah.
about that, to me, it was difficult to find any of the characters that were really likable, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But the thing was, the especially the Hellraiser like mythos kind of stuff, like the different morphing of the boxes and
Yeah.
the way you got into the box and the sacrifices and all that, the bells, there's this iconic bell sound throughout all of the Hellraisers, and in that film
Yeah.
it actually takes it from being a soundtrack to being part of the environment because they actually asked, do you hear those bells? Like apparently there's like a chime whenever the worlds are merging, and that's the sound that like indicates the Cenobites are crossing over. So I thought that
Yeah.
was really cool. That was
Yeah.
really neat.
And then
It's really long. It's like over 2 hours long. I mean, how
yeah.
many horror movies are over 2 hours long? So I mean, it held it for a good while.
Real quick, Chris, we'll move on to the next one. What's your favorite of the Hellraiser series if you had to pick?
Oh, it's two. It's definitely two.
Okay.
Where they, it's still the Kirsty storyline. It takes and it broadens it. It's got a lot more interaction to it.
Okay.
There you see a Cenobite getting made. Like there's a fight between the Cenobites at the end. Although it's a fairly simple fight, but there's still a fight between Cenobites at the end. That's definitely my favorite. Very gory movie though. Very gory.
Gotcha. Hey, and speaking of that, I didn't realize this. Can you guess what time of year part two came out? Interesting timing.
Christmas.
Yeah, December 23rd,
Yeah,
1988. Like,
I
man,
knew that.
like you
I
said,
knew
if it
that.
was if it was gory, because it looks like most of these like first one September, third one September, Inferno Hellseeker October, so it's just kind of random
Yeah,
December, but yeah.
yeah.
And then next one we'll talk about is Wreck, like record almost.
Wreck.
There
Yep.
you go. Tell me a little bit
So
about it. This is a new one for me. I mean, I think I've seen a commercial or trailer, but never.
so first thing with Rec, I am a big found footage horror fan.
Okay.
I mean, of all kinds of different ones. But Rec in particular is very, very interesting. So it's Spanish. It's about a zombie apocalypse that happens inside this one building. But what's really unique about it, the way they did it, is the setup is there is this news crew that is with a fire department and just kind of showing what they do after hours. I think that might have been the name of the show, was After Hours or something along those lines. And of course, they get called to this building to go deal with something, and then all hell breaks loose. Um, and, I mean, again, the movie is extremely influential with kind of a different genre of zombie. The zombies are very fast.
Mhm.
The cause of the zombie apocalypse is extremely unique. It is the
Mhm.
only one of its type that I'm aware of. um, and it's actually spiritual, biblical based.
Mhm.
It is like The Exorcist. It's a possession. So there's this one, and spoiler ahead, a little late. Sorry about
Dun,
that.
dun.
But yeah. So oops. Anyway, but so it is a possession movie, but the thing is, it's almost like a vampiric possession where you've got this one little girl from South America that has been possessed, and they've been trying to do an exorcism on her for forever, and it's failed and failed and failed and failed and failed. And she I'm trying to think of the exact way to explain this, because I mean it's like she bites a dog actually that lives with this family in the building, and that dog is actually kind of a connector between all four of the films by the third film. But so that's where it is. But each time the bite happens, the possession spreads. It's not exactly a virus, right? And so that's what's really unique. And so the movie was actually remade in America as Quarantine with Dexter's sister in it, Jennifer Carpenter. But the thing that really sucks about this is, while it's a really cool movie and it's a found footage and all that, and it's the same setup, but what made Rec unique, they completely removed. Like the exorcism aspect of it is just completely gone. And so that was, I mean, it's what makes it a hollow, soulless American remake, right?
This
So
Wreck was actually 7 point. I'm surprised 7.4 2007. That's really good on IMDb for a horror movie.
it is. And well, again, this is influential. There's a movie that came out in 2020 called Host. It's a found footage movie that happens across a webcast, kind of like what we're doing now. But the whole idea for that movie came from this movie.
Hmm.
And with it being a pandemic, it kind of fed into like, well, we're going to have this group of friends do a webcast, and it's
We
going to
watched
turn
that
into
one
this, that,
together.
and other.
First time I saw
We
it.
did.
Yeah.
So, but this movie, there is a scene in the movie with a child that's infected, and that child being infected is actually what influenced Host. So, but so you asked about my favorite Hellraiser. This is my favorite Wreck. It's Wreck 2. So what's really neat about this movie, and I hate that you said you haven't really seen them, so I'm kind of spoiling it for you a little bit. But I tell you, I'm gonna hold this one in the pocket, but I am gonna tell you what's neat about it. So this one picks up like seconds after this one. And what this is, so this is just people, it's like the tenants of the building. This is a SWAT team
Hmm.
that goes into the building for a response, and this is what they find. And the end of this movie is just bonkers in the best possible way. You cannot see it coming. Like the explanation and kind of feeding off what made this one great. This one's even better. Now you look on the IMDb, it is going to have a lower rating. I don't get it though, to be honest with you. I think this one's. I think it's just because it's the second one. I mean, it's already
Yeah.
been a found footage. We know where we are. We know what we're doing. It's a little more of the same, but it's not more of the same. It really goes off in its own unique direction with the mythos created here.
Right.
You know. Then you've got the third one that takes place at a wedding. Now, what's kind of interesting about this one is, first off, it is at a wedding. I can't think of very many zombie movies that happen at a wedding,
That is
that's their
good.
main setting. But the first 20 or 30 minutes of this thing is set up like the other two, where you've got people that are filming the wedding on their camcorders, and you've got closed circuit cameras for the church. But at some point in time, it slowly makes a transition to a legit film. Like, I mean, it's like a director making a real movie rather than just the found footage. And as they go, it intersplices found footage versus like the real film kind of thing. If you understand what I'm saying, where it's a little more
Yep.
polished, that kind of thing. And
How
then by
many
the time
actual how many actually films are there in the
this
series?
four, this is the
Oh,
last one, so it's four. And by the time you get to the fourth one, it's predominantly a legit film, if you understand what I'm saying. That polished, like made a film like you would normally make a film. And there's just a few interspersed, like security camera footage things that are the found footage part of it. And it does wrap the story up. With part three, what happens with it is it kind of takes a sidestep because in the first two, you're in the building. The third one, you're at the wedding that's happening at the same time as the first two, but there is a connection of why this wedding is important to these two. And then by the fourth one, you're actually back to the original story, but it's a little bit later in time, like, I don't know, a month, 2 months down the road, something like that. Very, very, very good quadrilogy, though. I mean, they're all very unique. They're all contained to themselves. It's not like, say, with Hellraiser, you got the first two or three that are pretty close to each other. Then it really, honest, as a series, becomes an anthology to some extent.
yeah.
Where we've got Pinhead in this scenario, we've got Pinhead in this scenario. They're not necessarily one continuous storyline. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
I'm gonna have to check
Um,
those out then.
yeah, I'd highly, highly recommend
Is it all
those.
Spanish, you said, or
It is. So, like, the only one that's in English is the American remake. All the
okay?
rest of them, they're only available in Spanish with subtitles, so you will have to read them.
Gotcha.
Um, Next, do we want to? I'm gonna leave this up to you. Do you want to talk about Evil Dead, or do you want to talk about The Conjuring?
Let's do Conjuring, because I actually had that pulled up here to share. But yeah, we can do that.
So these, all right. So I feel like I'm a pretty versed horror movie aficionado. There's
Yes.
there's hardly any of them that actually scare me. I mean, stuff that slasher movies from the '80s that people talk about. It's hard for me to envision people going to the theater and legitimately getting scared. I mean, I guess they did. I don't know. It doesn't affect me. I'll tell
Yeah.
you what does affect me is spiritual stuff, and I'll tell you why. I mean, if it's a werewolf, I mean, I can fight back. If it's a vampire, I can fight back. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something. You know what I'm saying? A demon, a spirit that invades your body and takes over your mind. I mean, there's no fighting that back. I mean, you don't
Right.
punch a ghost. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that stuff is scary. And I mean, it's biblical. I mean, in the Bible, it speaks of we are legion.
Yeah.
It's not like there's one or two out there. There's a pantheon. So anyway, in The Conjuring, whether you want to talk about the Warrens being for real, fake, this, that, or the third, they are based on a true story. These are, they're dramatized. They're over embellished, but they're from the case files of the Warrens, and they're extremely effective movies. I will say this: it is kind of funny. Nothing's actually conjured.
Mm.
We don't have a seance where we ask the demon to come in. You know what I'm saying? They're already there. Again, it's really almost kind of a haunted house movie, but they're so effective from top to bottom in horror filmmaking. I mean, you've got the sound design, you've got the lighting, you've got the story pacing that's it's very strategic in how it does and when it does. And I mean, it gets under your skin so much.
It does.
And I mean, I'm gonna tell you a brief story. I'm gonna try and make it as brief as I can, but get to the point with the second one. The second one, I'm talking scared the bejesus out of me, next
Mm.
level. Like, honest to God, the scariest movie to me I've ever seen. But so a few years ago, I think maybe 6, 7 years ago at this point, we had a hurricane. And at the time I was living in Georgia, I was close to Savannah, and it was the worst hurricane that ever happened in my life, right? My family evacuated, they were gone. At the time, I was a district manager for Subway, and I couldn't leave. I had several stores that I managed, and I had to be there. And so The Conjuring 2 had just come out. I think it was that Tuesday. It was a Friday. I was watching it. The hurricane was hitting. Okay. I was watching it. I had tree branches breaking for real. I had like the wind making trees like lay over like 90 degrees. I mean, the wind whipping, like rain, lightning, thunder. I mean, everything you can imagine of a bad hurricane. So, I mean, you're just talking about all the ambience the movie actually had with this added on. And you've
Right.
seen the surround system I've got. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars in this thing. I mean, you literally feel it, right?
Right.
So, and then you're really experiencing a storm. Well, you get to the end of the movie where the climax is happening, and you're dealing with the nun. My power goes out,
Mm.
like for real goes out. Not like it flickers, like
Right.
boom, it's done.
And you're by yourself.
Everything. I'm by myself. It's
Yeah,
pitch black dark.
yeah.
Okay. Like, oh my God. I mean, talk about literally like skin crawling. You know what I'm saying? And so this is the environment I'm watching it in. My power doesn't come back till like 5 o'clock the next day.
Right.
Okay. So I've got all this stuff going on in my head of what the movie was. And I mean, I don't know. You talk about something getting under your skin. I can't
Oh yeah,
imagine anything more than that, you know?
exactly.
But so you got the Conjuring, Conjuring 2, and then you have Annabelle from the first one, and specifically, and then you've got her whole pantheon of movies. You got three of them now. The first one was just god awful, horrible, but that's a whole nother
What about the
story.
Nun? Is that part of the universe?
It clearly, yeah. So you've got the Nun, which she was really more of the second movie, but then you've got two movies in that one now, and then you've got La Llorona, what something like that, that is not technically like The Conjuring, but it kind of is. Like there's a reference to it in the Warrens, and then you've got Conjuring 3, um, which is a little different than the first two, but it's still
Yeah, right
it's
here.
got, yeah, the devil made me do it, which originally when they were going to make that one, it was actually supposed to be about a werewolf, but then they changed gears somewhere in the process. Now, we've talked about some that you haven't seen here. You've seen The Conjuring. Like what,
Right.
again, we're talking about James Wan. This is the guy from Saw.
Yeah,
Again, another amazing horror franchise into its own is Saw. And I mean,
yeah,
that changed the landscape of horror there for a while too. You literally had a new Saw movie every year for like 10 years. You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like every Halloween, you just knew a Saw movie was going to come out for like 7 or 8 years. But anyway, like, I mean, do you have any Conjuring stories that was special to you?
Yeah, actually, I believe I saw the first and the second one at theaters. Very scary. It's actually one of those. I usually can handle most things, but I remember in that movie, I kind of closed my eyes from those tense scenes, like you knew something was going to jump. I kind of like, oh, we need to get this over with. Like I think was it the second one, like the nun, and he got very close, and she was sitting there looking, and that was very intense. I hate to say, I haven't really seen Annabelle or the Nun. I would watch the trailer, look at the reviews, and be mixed reviews. So I haven't seen those, but definitely one and two are very watchable and solid movies. Great movies, by the way.
Yeah, so the third one's very watchable too. And the
Yeah,
Nun, the Nun directly ties back into that first movie. There's a part where they're at the college in the very first film where the Warrens are met, and she's telling a story about the farmer from France. Well, I mean, that's the Nun. And
right,
that was how the Nun kind of wound up coming to haunt the Warrens.
right.
But anyway, I mean, super solid. James Wan, master of horror. I mean, also, also had what was it, Malignant? I haven't
Mhm.
seen that one. Have you?
I haven't. That's kind of on my list, but definitely.
Yeah. All
Real
right. So,
quick, we can jump into Evil Dead. We'll jump into that real
yeah,
next.
so you say I think we're getting close to running out of time. So I mean, my special number five, I may just have to say like teaser for next time. But
There you go.
Evil Dead, I mean, Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, I mean, classic. I mean, you got at this point, it's become even more of a franchise because originally for 20 years you had Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. Now you got the
Shout
Fede
out to Ryan
Alvarez.
Brewer. He loved these. You're damn right. It was good.
Yeah, yeah, damn right. Now, in Evil
Yeah.
Dead 2 is the only VHS that guy still has. So
Okay.
I'm telling you, whether that was in his top five at the end or not, top five it was.
Yeah.
And that was also the first movie that he and I talked about and became friends over, was him telling me about the tree rape scene in Evil Dead, and me not believing that was actually a real thing, because you could tell he loved to tell big fish stories even then.
Right.
Which the funny thing was, Ryan would tell you five stories, all of them would sound like big fish stories. Four of them would be real, and you
Yeah.
could not tell. You know what I'm saying? And then one would actually be a big fish story. But anyway, but yeah, so you had the tree rape scene in the first one, and like I said, you've got the remake that Fede Alvarez did, also great horror director in his own right. That Evil Dead remake, have you seen it?
I need to. It looked pretty gory. Is it gory?
It's excellent. I saw it at the theater. I mean, there is so much blood. It is literally raining blood at the end.
Yeah.
So, but then you've got the Evil Dead Rise, that also just came out. Also fantastic, very gory, very like just there's some moments where just stuff happens. It just like you got to like shut your eyes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then you had, even with Bruce Campbell, you had the Evil Dead show.
Yeah.
Which
I did.
the
I
thing
watched
that,
first and second season.
and they were great. I mean, I
Yeah.
will say the pacing of season 2 and 3, I think they could have cut out half the episodes, had the same story, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And then, but it ends the same way as Army of Darkness, the alternate ending. We never get to that story. Like that's the thing that bothers me so much about that. But Evil Dead is just, I mean, it's so amazing. And again, for talking about comedic horror, the first one is legit horror. If you've ever watched it, I mean, it has
Yeah.
horrible stuff in it, and no real funny stuff to kind of balance it out. But
Right.
the second one, it turns into almost like Three Stooges horror, just
Kind of
over the
campy.
top. Yeah, stuff that influenced like Peter Jackson, like Bad Taste and Brain Dead or Dead Alive, whichever one you want to call it.
Right.
And so I mean, it just, I don't know, quintessential. I mean, must see viewing. Um, I know you're probably watching the clock. I have no idea how much time we've got. So, but for the last one, what I was going to do
Real
wasn't
quick on the Evil
exactly.
Dead. What was your
Yeah,
favorite? If you had to pick Evil Dead series.
I think it's two. It's got to be Evil
Okay.
Dead 2. So I mean, we got a theme here with all these second movies. Like
There
I
you go.
think there's a lot of movies out there that are franchises that have sequels. And it's funny to me. I think I was Brad that I was talking to about this, but horror is like the only subgenre that I think almost every franchise, one of the later movies is better. Most movies like The Matrix or I mean RoboCop, whatever, most movies like that, it's the first one.
Yeah.
We go back, we want to see the movie, we want to see more of that character. It's fun, enjoyable, whatever, but the first one is definitely the best. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? But in horror, I mean, which a lot of franchises have so many movies. I mean, eventually maybe you make a better one, right? But I mean, it's almost a given that not the first one is going to be the best one, which I think a lot of them too. A lot of horror movies, the first one is low budget. The first one is a
Yeah.
passion project, and when they make the second one, they get more budget, they get more opportunity, they get more effects, they just get better.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Um,
Real quick, give us a real quick teaser of the fifth
all
one.
right.
All right.
So it is Mike Flanagan.
Okay.
That is the franchise.
There
So
you
it's
go.
not one particular movie. It's this guy is such a horror master. You go back to like Hush,
Right.
Netflix exclusive. This is in like purgatory hell, like for streaming. You can't find it anymore, but
Right.
absolutely amazing movie. Then from Hush, you've got Midnight Mass. That was the book that she wrote, a TV series that he made for Netflix. All right, so then you've also got like The Haunting of Hill House. That might be, I mean, it's possibly the greatest horror show ever. I mean, it might just be top five horror, period. There is one of the episodes, it's called Two Storms. The show, I mean, have you seen it?
I don't. I haven't. I need to.
So, I mean, Two Storms, I think, is possibly the greatest singular episode of a TV show ever made. The production values are insane. It has super, super, super long takes. It is very scary. There is a funeral going on, and there's a storm at the funeral, and there's also a storm that is in the past, and they're interweaving these timelines, telling a story that explains what's going on at both points in time. It is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Mike Flanagan is a genius when it comes to this stuff.
I'll have to
Um,
check that out.
the Haunting of Bly Manor, keeping with Mike Flanagan's Netflix. This is also good, although this is absolutely a step down to me from Hill House, Bly Manor. Which Bly Manor, what's interesting about this is it's based on Shirley Jackson's Turning of the Screw, which it has been adapted many, 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 many times in the movies. One of them being one of the most popular being The Others with Nicole Kidman.
Mhm.
Have you seen that one?
I have. That was a good one from I think like
Yeah.
mid 2000s. I think.
Yep. So anyway, but it was a very good movie. It had good jump scare, or excuse me, TV show, good jump scares and all that, but it just was not. I think in some ways it was trying to ride the coattails of The Haunting of Hill House, but I don't know, it wasn't really quite as unique as what Hill House was. It was kind of a little more of a rehash, but it just wasn't quite quality, which I mean, The Haunting of Hill House was like 10, 11, 12 episodes. It was a lot of episodes. Bly Manor's like six.
Hmm.
So it wasn't quite as in depth either. You know what I'm saying? And then The Fall of the House of Usher is another one that he did that I actually haven't had a chance to catch up with yet. Have you?
Uh,
I would love to see his
I
his
liked
take on
Hush. That was my first introduction to him. I thought that was solid.
what's that?
I liked Hush. That was one of my, I think the first one
Oh,
I've ever
Hush.
seen. Yeah, that was a solid one.
Yeah, Hush is great because it's an hour and 15 minutes long, it's an hour and 20 minutes long. It's not long, but I mean, it's got like literally like 3 or 4 total actors in it at all, and it's mostly the protagonist and the antagonist. That's it
Okay. It
for
is.
like 90 95% of the movie. And
Exactly.
but it's so good. And I mean, of course, the protagonist is deaf and mute, I mean, which poses so many of its own challenges. And how do you deal with that? How do you defend yourself against someone who can see, or not, well, not see, but they can hear, and they can speak, and all these other things that you can't,
Right.
then so Flanagan had another franchise, Ouija.
Hmm.
This is not the first one. This is the second one. Flanagan did not do the first one. The first one is pretty universally panned. I think it's a 4 on the IMDb, but
Wow.
this one's like in the sixes, and it's actually really good. So it's the origin of evil. It's like, even though it's the second one, it's like the first one, and it explains the Ouija board. I said it funny a minute ago. I did that on purpose, but that's what, like the phonetics of it. But it's the Ouija board, but Ouija. That's again like talking with Ryan. That's something that we would do, just kind of making fun of it. So like,
Right.
but anyway, with the origin of evil, he created the mythos of what made the board that's in the first movie, and it's very effective. I'd say it's really kind of close and in line with Sinister. There's a lot of similarities there. And then another Mike Flanagan good one is Oculus. Have you seen this?
I have. I think you're telling me about. I've heard good things, but I have not.
So Oculus, again, talking about Ryan, he was a movie aficionado, horror aficionado. He saw more horror movies than me and you combined,
You
probably.
did exactly.
And anyway, but in this movie, there were 2 times that he winced, that he was like, "Oh God," like, so. I
Right.
mean, that really kind of speaks to something about that movie. But Oculus, was not Mike Flanagan's first movie, but he did a short film of Oculus. It was like 7 or 8 minutes long. You can find it on YouTube. It's excellent.
Hmm.
The short film that led to this, and really, I think that's what led to his career. Even though, if I remember correctly, I think he made a movie or two before this one. But I mean, I think it's one of those things where the Oculus short film was something that he had made. He had the ideas for it, and I mean, it was something he was able to come back to. But I mean, I think if you're talking about horror icons. I mean, like, Flanagan is right up there with James Wan as some of the best of all time. I mean, I
Right.
honestly like Wan. I mean, you've got Alfred Hitchcock that clearly is a master of the genre, like way back. Influenced the way you make movies of all genres after it. You know what I'm saying? But I honestly think, especially if you look at modern filmmaking, I really genuinely think that he is right there on that level.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And in Saw One, you had Lee Winnell was one of the main actors with Carrie Ellis, and he wrote Saw, and he also has kind of gone off on his own direction, making horror films as well, like The Invisible Man. Did you see
Hmm.
that?
Yeah.
That had actually it had the one of the actors from The Haunting of Hill House, and I cannot remember his name. He was the twin brother. Um, but he was the antagonist of the Invisible Man, and that's another one that for sound is probably it's a benchmark kind of thing. If you have a really good sound system, I mean, they do a lot with the sound design for that movie. But so, I mean, I don't know that I'd say Lee Winnell's as good as James as far as the direction and creation, but I mean, clear, which for, I mean, years the two of them worked together. I mean, it was almost like the horror version of like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck or something. I mean,
Right.
if there was a movie with James on it, then Lee was there somewhere, whether he was a producer, writer, or something.
Right.
Um, so do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you want to
Yeah.
add?
Yeah, those are definitely some great picks. I'll go over mine briefly. These are more of the OGs from when we were talking about it. So I'm gonna go with Halloween,
Yeah.
of course. Great. I'm kind of more old school, and the reason why I really like it is Halloween. It's actually one of my favorite holidays. Hope no one ever thinks I'm weird out there, but it's like the pumpkins and the ambiance and the time of year. Also, big college football fan. Throw that in there. But all of them are great. I will say the most recent. I mean, I think that one, the most recent one, not great. It went a totally different way. Did you see that one, by the way? The one,
No, the new ones that Danny McBride wrote, and
yeah,
oh my gosh, what's his name? That did, it was like Day Green. I can't remember his name. He's the guy that
Yeah.
made the new Exorcist movie that was just atrocious.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't want that guy to make any more horror films. I mean,
Yeah.
apparently the Halloween reboot was good, like the first one,
It
but the
was
second,
2018 was it was solid.
yeah, but the second and the third one just like lost direction, like the Star Wars films did or something. But you know, I certainly respect Halloween, but I don't
Yeah.
really like Halloween as much as you and Ryan did. I mean, my favorite one is four. The
I do
one
like
that
four is solid. It is.
yeah, the one that Danielle Harris was in, which I love Danielle Harris. You know, I've got Halloween 4 and 5, those tins that Anchor Bay put out years ago, and she actually signed them. That'd be a
Oh,
neat thing to show on here someday. And I've also got Danielle Harris signed Last Boy Scout. You know, she was in there. But Halloween 4 was really really good.
it was.
Five less so, but I mean it was
I was
okay. And then
terrible actually.
yeah,
I personally
exactly.
like six. Ryan always said six was terrible, and he told me, his late years, watch the unedited cut and it had a totally different spin on it at the very end. I kind of watched it. I'm like, oh, that might have been a little better. He was right on that. But
Well, of course, but you know
yeah,
what's good about six though. Six is what gave us Paul Rudd. Like
exactly.
I love Paul Rudd, and to my knowledge, that was either that or Clueless. One or the other was his first movie. It was at least the first movie I remember him being in. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
a good thing about six. But so 4, 5, and 6 had the same problem as reboot 2 and 3. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like they had the really good start. It's like, yeah, this is great, and then it's like they lost focus or direction. Like, okay, well, we had this great start. We didn't know it was going to be this good. What do we do with it? You know,
Yeah.
because I mean, they had like it was like the Michael Myers cult or whatever that just kind of went off in Neverland in 5 and 6. And anyway, but yeah, so, which I know you're gonna totally, no one's gonna agree with me on this. But also, like, I think it was Resurrection 8. Was that the one that had Busta Rhymes in it?
That one's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad, but that's one of those movies that's so bad it's actually good. And I think Busta
Mhm.
Rhymes, I don't really care for him as a rapper per se. He's got one or two songs I like, but like I thought he was really funny in that movie. He kind of made it. So for
Yeah.
me, I saw that one in the theater, believe it or not.
Oh
I may
wow.
have seen I may have saw it with you at the theater. I can't remember. I don't know how I saw that in the theater because that's like that one and the Rob Zombie remake of Halloween. Those are the only two Halloweens I've seen in the theater.
All right.
And of
Those are
course
terrible, by the way. Ryan and I
I,
agree on that. Do not let Rob Zombie touch Halloween. I thought theirs was terrible.
so well, unfortunately, Rob Zombie peaked with the Devil's Rejects. Like I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, we've got a new horror god with the Devil's Rejects, and then it
Now he's
just
doing
was
the
like, then instead,
monsters. Hard to
yeah,
watch.
now he's got the Monsters with like a 3.1 on the IMDb or something.
Yeah,
He's
terrible.
living at large, man. He's getting there.
It is.
Maybe the drugs have caught up with him. I don't know. I mean, because you go back, the House of a Thousand Corpses is pretty good,
Yeah.
and then Devil's Rejects is fantastic. And then what?
We
You
should
you
do
had
we
Three
could
from
do a
Hell that
Rob
was
Zombie
okay.
breakdown. We could do a Rob Zombie breakdown while it was here. We could trash him.
And then
Yeah,
and then it was like the David Crusoe like path. It was like it's my turn,
exactly.
blam.
It is.
So, but
Yeah, and then the
so
real
that's
quick,
Halloween. So yeah,
yeah,
keep
I'm gonna
going.
go with Nightmare on Elm Street. Got to go with Freddy. A little more of the OG. Like I started out, that first one was just it's classic Wes Craven. It was great. I
That
think number two for all the woke people out there, sorry, little homosexual gayness, whatever it is, got a little weird. Ryan always used to say that one was that one was ruined. Four was good. It seems like a couple of these four, like they kind of figured it out. Four was solid, from what I remembered. That that
Dream Warriors is the best.
Dream Warriors is
Unless you
great.
talk about
That Freddy's Dead was like a video game, terrible. I will
yeah
say Freddy versus Jason, pretty good.
yeah
Not too bad. It was watchable.
no, it was really good. And
It was.
what's really sad is after that we should have gotten Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, but I think that the companies that own the franchises, New Line didn't own Evil Dead,
Yeah.
so they could never quite. But they did make a comic book series that was supposed to be pretty good. Unfortunately, I never read it,
Right.
but yeah, no, and it was funny because I was going to do Nightmare on Elm Street too after Ryan passed.
Mm,
The night that I got home, that was what me and my wife watched was Nightmare on Elm Street 1.
nice.
That was our
Oh much.
whatever remembrance of him. Yeah, like we're
Yeah.
that was the movie we watched.
Exactly. And I'm gonna go with Friday 13th. That'd be the third. I mean, first one,
So
it is what it is, but it got a little better with like four, five was a little weird, and then six, it got worse. I will say that most recent one was not bad at all to me. The
The
2000.
remake was really good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Yeah,
The remake is actually probably the best, other than Freddy versus Jason. Freddy versus Jason is kind of in a weird place. It might be the best of both. You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? Um, Now it's funny because you're the one that said I am the lead guy of number five. I don't know if I still look like him or not, but I mean, for like 20 years, I was like, oh my God, that's Chris. You know,
Yeah,
like I was the main character.
yeah.
But I think from what I can remember, six was pretty good, and then
Yeah.
seven was the one that had the telekinesis that was just, I mean,
I got a little weird.
you get the Blu-ray. It's got like 20 minutes of deleted scenes where they had to cut all the gore out. If they had actually made it with all those deleted scenes, it probably would have been good. So, but I mean, it got caught up in like the censorship wars of the late Reagan era or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, what's
So
next?
so I
I
got
mean,
I got Halloween, Friday 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm gonna
yep.
go. I was gonna go with a different one, but I was looking through them. I'm gonna have to go. And since you brought it up, movies that I'm gonna go with Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And
First
so
one was solid.
yep,
That remake with Jessica Biel, we watched it. I remember. I think we rode up to Statesboro back in college. We came back and we're like, "Woof, that was intense, man.
dude.
That was,
Yeah,
that was a ride."
we went to Savannah and watched it. It was a great theater. That was one of the best theaters I'd ever been in
It
at the
was
time, and that was a trip. Like, I mean, Texas Chainsaw original. By the time you and I watched it, I think there have been so many clones of it. I don't know that it was as effective as it was when it came out, and it's really not that gory at all. People remember gore in it that's not really there,
yeah,
but that one that Michael Bay produced. And Marcus Nispel was the director, if I remember correctly, which he is not a great director, but that was a good one. And I mean, it took for that point in time. I think it was its generation version. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it was so
right.
good. And I mean, Jessica Biel's gorgeous. The only thing about that movie, there was a scene with her boyfriend where he had been captured and they had him in a tub of all things. I was like, we missed an opportunity for her to find him alive with his face removed, and that was the face that that Leatherface was using. You know what I'm saying? That would have just been over the top, perfection, but still very, very good.
And those most recent ones, the one Matthew McConaughey was hard to watch. The Texas Chainsaw 3D, I think, was decent. And that Netflix one was you had CGI splatter blood, and that was a mess. They were just trying to cash in, but
Yeah.
we'll say they haven't aged well. So I'd say the Jessica Biel. Of course, the first one was great. So I was throwing that in there.
Did you see the second one with Hopper in it?
I
With
did.
Dennis Hopper?
Yeah, that got a little campy too, almost like a little comedy.
Well, of course. I mean, yeah. I mean, so everybody accused him of having so much gore in the first one, so he put a lot of useless gore in the second one. But
Yeah,
man, I don't know where Dennis Hopper was, but he wasn't there. I mean,
yeah,
I think he was on the good drugs at that point in time. That movie, to me, I think that's a cult favorite now, especially when you look at horror movies made today and all that. But for me, I just recently watched it, like within the last 6 months for the first time, and maybe I got to watch it again because I
yeah.
didn't get it. I think that was Toby Hooper. Just, I have to do this because I've got to make a lot of money for the studio because I have a contract. It's not that he really cared about it or want to make a good one because it was
Right.
not good.
And then real quick, this one might be out of nowhere. I kind of was debating, but I'm gonna go Child's Play. Don't fuck with the Chuck.
Don't
First
fuck with the
couple were
Chuck.
great. I need to watch the TV series. I think it's in season three. I heard it's getting a little weird on the last one, but maybe it's just one of those Chucky great one-liners. Is it do you know his name? Brad. What's the guy's name? Brad. The voice. Dorif.
Dorf, yeah, yeah. Brad, I
Yeah,
mean, he's
great,
been in tons of
great
stuff.
name. I think there's been seven of them. It's looking like this is pretty updated and a TV series, so very successful.
Well, I'm I'm gonna talk two things on that. First off,
Yeah.
congratulations on getting us our first parental advisory. You were the one that did it, not me. Just saying.
That's a
But
quote.
you talk about you talk about the Child's Play having a series, but you remember Friday the 13th also had a series that went
They
for
did.
3 seasons, and A Nightmare on Elm Street also had a series that went for 2 seasons.
That's right.
Neither
Freddy's
one of them,
Nightmares.
yeah, Freddy's Nightmares. Neither one of them you can get. I mean, like Freddy's Nightmares, you got to straight up get a bootleg if you're going to get it. Now,
Yeah.
I think the Friday the 13th series, which was an anthology series, also it's got a DVD of it that came out, but it's never been released again on Blu-ray and high def. Of
Yeah.
course, they might. It was a TV show shot with soap opera cameras or something. There might not be an HD version out there. You know what I mean?
Right.
But Child's Play is one. I mean, clearly, so that influenced a ton of movies like Megan and The Boy. Which have you seen The Boy?
That pretty good?
The Boy is excellent. Now I haven't
Really?
seen the second one,
Mm.
but the first one is very good, and I'm not going to spoil that one for you, but you need to watch it. So I mean, but
Okay.
that's where movies like that came from. But Child's Play is one that never really spoke to me. I've definitely seen them. I don't know which
Mm.
ones honestly, because I haven't seen them in order, and I haven't seen all of them. There was one that had Jennifer Tilly, where she was
Hmm.
like the bride of Frankenstein, but it was the
Yeah,
bride of
that's pretty
Chucky.
bad. And they had the
Um,
scene of Chucky, which is him like having a kid or something. That was terrible. I don't
yeah,
even watch it, but
So, which I mean, talk about Jennifer Tilly, man, like that's going back a ways. I don't know that I've seen her in anything in a minute, but that voice was so recognizable. I mean, you, you loved
yeah,
or hated it, I guess, but I mean, it was very, you knew it was Jennifer Tilly. There was no missing that voice. You know what I'm
exactly.
saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, man. Appreciate a great conversation tonight on the top five horror franchises and really good insight and breakdown. Hey, if everybody's still stuck around, make sure to like, subscribe, share it, podcast. We're gonna try to do these when we can and add to it and have some great conversations. We might make it broad, make it more action. Might do greatest Steven Seagal movies. Sensei
we,
Seagal, just for you, for
we,
your boy.
he is not my boy. Let's name that number one.
Uh,
Shout out to the Mac Dojo Life on Reddit. So I mean, I am a avid subscriber to the Mac Dojo Life. What that is they show all these. So back in the '80s, we were growing up. We had all these new martial arts movies with Van Damme and Seagal. That was like they knew this one way they could touch you and like your heart would explode or something. Not real
exactly.
in any way, shape, form, or fashion. We didn't know. We thought they were the baddest asses on the planet. You know what I'm saying? But
Exactly.
anyway, Steven Seagal believes that shit.
He does.
I mean, he does, and he is out in Never Neverland, and I mean, the Steven Seagal story is stranger than fiction. I mean, he has lived a for real storybook life that is just beyond belief. But anyway, so we should do a Steven Seagal, but he ain't my boy. But I see him every day on the Mac Dojo life because he does so much stupid, crazy shit. You just can't miss it.
There
You
he
know what
is.
I'm saying? And
Oh
it
yeah.
is truly funny. So anyway, yeah. So there you go. But Steven Seagal would be a good one.
He
That would
was.
be interesting.
We'll have to do this.
So the new movies that are all like threes on the IMDb, I ain't seen a Steven Seagal movie in like I don't know 20 years or something that's new. I have seen Steven Seagal movies recently, but they're like his first 5 or 10 years of being an actor. So or whatever you want to call him.
Right.
The Karate Whisperer, the dance fighting, angel, whatever he is.
T-Rex arms.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm running. I'm running. I
Yeah.
got him. I mean, possibly the weirdest runner ever on film. Like, which it's funny. Go back and look this up. I honestly think if you watch Dolph Lundgren in Rocky Four, when he's running on the track, he runs the exact same way.
Yeah, but
And
he
I
looks more
think
badass though.
he does because he's like,
Six
two
five.
Steven Seagals or something like that. I mean, he's built like, I mean, he's like two Sylvester Stallones or something. But what
Yeah.
I'm getting at is Steven Seagal is so out in Never Neverland. I think what happened, that came out in like 1984, and he saw it and he's like, Russian big man. He's strong,
Yeah.
run weird. I need to run like him so I
Yeah.
look cool. I think that's
Yeah.
what happened. So whenever like, Above the Law came out in like 88 or whatever, like 4 years later, he's like, I'm gonna run like Dolph Lundgren. I'm a badass. Like
Yeah.
this is
Good
how you're
point.
supposed to run. He's Olympic. Like he's a real guy. Like I honestly, because those are the only two people I've ever seen run like that. And Steven
Exactly.
Seagal, if you try to find it, it will not be hard. He defends running like that is like that's the way you're supposed to run. Like everybody else, like literally 8 billion people, like Usain Bolt is doing it wrong. You're
Mhm.
supposed to run like that. That's the right way to do it.
Right.
So anyway, just saying.
Exactly. All right. Really appreciate the conversation tonight, and everybody check it out. We're gonna have more to come on the Retro Rewatch.
Retro Rewatch.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys.
All right, see you later.
See you.